to have Kimberly Floss, and she's from PepsiCo, and she's going to be talking about launching a FinOps organization. So one more, bigger than you just did, round of applause for Kimberly, everyone.
Well, first let me say thanks everybody for coming. I was worried I'd be talking to myself up here, except for my own team and my own partners, etc. So what I'm going to talk to you about today is how we launched our FinOps organization several years ago, the tools that we picked, the processes that we put in place, etc. In case anybody is coming behind us or looking to enhance their offering, you'll see what we have. So we're going to cover 4 items specifically. The first one is around how we build our centralized team, which is my team, the FinOps team, which is a part of our overall cloud practice. We're going to talk about our tool selection and how we gained executive support and the reporting that we do out with our executives, and how we communicated and trained our decentralized team. So the interesting thing about PepsiCo is we're global. Hopefully you are all very familiar with our products, and hopefully had some at breakfast this morning. I saw there was Pepsi out there. And so we have lots of different people with lots of different service offerings that we're trying to reach. And so building a FinOps team, it's not like I had 100 people that I could go out globally and reach everybody. So we had to choose a different model, which is where we went in our organization. So we have the decentralized team, which is my piece, my team. One person is here from my team. The others will be watching when the recordings are out. We had our tool RFP that we did when we chose our partner. We have all the leadership reporting and dashboarding that we do from a FinOps perspective so that we can demonstrate the value that the team brings and the maturity that we have obtained over the last 2 years of our journey. And then, of course, communication training and keeping all of these decentralized people all moving forward. So let's go ahead and jump right in. The team. We started out getting a nice bill from our cloud provider with 1 million rows and trying to figure out who needed to pay what piece of that bill. So we formed our team with a couple of people back in 2021, and our focus started with cost allocation. We bought into the whole FinOps Foundation, the best practices. We read the book, we took the training, we got the certifications, right? We talked to various partners. We have a managed services provider in the audience today. And so we spoke with them. We spoke with the tool vendors. We spoke with our cloud hosting providers, industry thought leaders, consulting partners, everybody. So at that time, if I had been sitting next to you, I would have said, "Hi, my name is Kim. What do you do for FinOps?" Because I was looking to learn what everybody else was doing as we built our practice. And you can see we have the wheel, which is what we call it, inform, optimize, operate, the same as the FinOps Foundation. And so we focused initially on inform, getting the cost allocation out, getting the bill out, because we do full chargeback to all of the folks that live in the cloud. And so we had to parcel it out amongst all of those folks. So that was our first step in getting everything together. I've spoken about cost allocation. Cost allocation for us, it's a little bit complicated. Unfortunately, it's more complicated than probably a smaller organization. We have 3 types of spend that we focused on in particular. Direct spend is very easy. You built it, you tagged it, you pay for it. It's yours, there's no question. The second piece is what we call indirect, which is the shared components of the cloud, things like network expense, things like backups, right? And so everybody has to pay for a piece of the network, but it's kind of hard to determine if you used more than someone else. So we do a split based on algorithms for those services that are shared by everyone. You don't have a choice. The third piece is what we refer to as shared platform spend. These are big platforms that we build that everyone consumes, and I'll give you a few examples of these coming up, like Kubernetes, Databricks, et cetera, and how we split the cost there. So we spend a significant amount of time up front on cost allocation. How do we get the cost to the people? It's not as simple as just looking it up in the portal for whatever your cloud provider is. Because if you look in the portal, it might say, yeah, your services are $100. That's great. We're probably going to charge you $200 because you have to pay for all those extra pieces that you don't have when you look in the screen. So we had a concerted focus on dashboarding and getting all of your costs out to the people as cloud consumers. So if you're all my cloud consumers, right, you're all going to want to see in a dashboard, what are all my pieces of spend, right? Yes, I have my direct, that's great, it's $100, but I have to add in all of the other pieces as well because we're going to bill you for all those pieces internally. So the dashboarding is critical so that people can budget properly and people understand what costs they're going to have. The third piece is the optimization, right, which is, yeah, I think my cloud cost is too high. What can I do to reduce it? And the way you can reduce it is by following our optimization recommendations. So we have a whole slew of optimization recommendations for just about every application or product for us that lives in the cloud. And we will review those with you, or you can look them up on the dashboard so that you can see, hey, if you think your cloud spend is too high, you could take these actions to reduce it. Hey, even if you don't think your cloud spend is too high, we probably think your cloud spend is too high. So you should still focus on reducing it. And so getting an actual understanding of your costs is important because it's not all about let's just shave $10 off the cost. It's about the value that you bring to the organization and the cost underneath it to demonstrate that. And then the last piece is the KPIs and reporting. So we have KPIs for the FinOps organization as a whole to demonstrate our maturity. And we're working on KPIs for our business units to demonstrate their participation in our journey from a FinOps perspective, and of course, all of the executive reporting. So there's two pieces that we had to build for all of this. The first piece was, how do you train your core FinOps team that is responsible for governance, optimization, reporting, the KPIs, delivering all of the cloud cost reduction? How do we train them? What data do they need to do their jobs? And then the second piece is all the decentralized execution, which is everybody that owns an application in the cloud or a product in the cloud. It's all of the business unit leaders that have multiple applications in the cloud. And what knowledge do those folks need to take action on their activities for optimization, or even to take action to understand what their cloud spend model is? Because if you own something, you ought to understand the cost to own it. So we had to focus on both of those tracks in parallel to kind of get everybody moving and on board with understanding how we were going to be treating them with respect to ways of working and how we needed to work together. Because FinOps takes a village. It's not something that we do to you. It's not something that we do for you. It is something that we all do together. And that was kind of a new mindset for all of our folks in the cloud. So after forming the tool at the time, or forming the team at the time with our handful of people, we went for a tool. Now, everybody always asks, you know, what tool did you pick? Why didn't you build a tool? All of those questions, right? At the time, I didn't really have a choice. I didn't have the people to build a tool at the time. And we didn't really want to build a tool because we didn't really think that building our own tool would give us a big differentiator in the market, right? We're PepsiCo, chips and soda, snacks, right? So having a FinOps tool custom built for us wasn't going to really be a differentiator in terms of, are you going to buy more chips because we have a great tool? Probably not. So we did an RFP across multiple vendors at the time, looking at three main sets of requirements. The first piece was technical. Let's face it, most of the tools out there at the time, this was 2021, they all did kind of the same technical things. Some of them had a few bells and whistles that others didn't. Now, of course, there are many more tool offerings out there, and they probably all do comparable technical things as well. So that wasn't a huge differentiator for us. The cost allocation was big for us, though, because we do custom cost allocations, which I'll talk about in terms of that indirect and that shared platform spend. And it was really important for us to be able to do that customization to get the cost to the people. So again, direct, very easy. You built it, you tagged it, you pay for it, it's yours. There's no dispute. The other piece is not so easy because you have to be fully aware of how much everybody uses with respect to their components so that when they are charged for that and they have to pay for that, they don't argue the point. And the third piece was support for different cloud hosting providers, right? At the time that we were doing our review, not every tool supported every cloud platform. It's probably not as true today, but at the time, we were very cognizant of what our hosting providers were going to be and making sure that the tool offering would meet our needs. So we did the RFP, and we picked Flexera as our partner. There are hopefully some Flexera folks in the audience from a partnership perspective, or not, because they've already heard this story. So from a technical perspective, right-sizing was key for us, decommissioning things that are no longer in use, right? It can be really hard to tell what's not in use. Example, you got a VM. The VM is running a database. The database is always going to chew up memory. The database is always going to use CPU cycles, whether anybody uses it or not. So you look at that, and it has 50% utilization or whatever before anybody launches a transaction. So finding what's idle, what has low utilization, can be a bit tricky. It's also a bit tricky depending on what tools you have in which to feed that. And we have a number of monitoring tools that we use that will tell us CPU utilization, memory utilization, et cetera. And of course, there's cloud-native tools in the cloud that will give you that information as well. We also had to look at how things are used, right? So coming from a data center mentality, 24/7, everything's up and running all the time. So you don't need to focus on, well, should I run this? Should I not run this? But when you look at, say, a non-production data warehouse, maybe you don't need to run it 7 days a week when you're loading it, right? And the fact is, when you're using services in the cloud that are pay-per-use, hey, do you really need to run that on Saturdays and Sundays, right? Is anybody working on Saturdays and Sundays to actually use that system? Maybe yes, maybe no. So we had to look at how things are scheduled, how different applications are used, and figure out what's an appropriate use case, right? It's very easy to load a data warehouse every day, and then if you need the data, it's there. But when I say, hey, you can load it every day if you want, but it's going to cost you $100 a pop to do it, then maybe you don't need it on Saturdays, right? Because then it's actually actual cash out of your pocket, which is a new mindset. So from a technical perspective, we had all of these requirements and different use cases that we wanted to be sure our tooling met. But the bigger piece for us was our internal requirements, right? How we wanted to ingest data from other sources besides the cloud. The FinOps team is certainly very focused on cloud hosting, period. That's our #1 mantra. But we add extra pieces in there, right? We have software that we own. And if you're using certain things in the cloud, we have BYOL, bring your own license software. We got to add that cost in. Guess what? There's labor. While it's nifty that the cloud runs for free, right? You just hit the button, you pay your cloud vendor, life is good. We have labor to support it because we need an awful lot of monitoring and everything else with respect to make sure that things are running optimally. So we wanted the ability to ingest Excel files or APIs or whatever so that we could bring in all those extra costs and truly inform someone, here's your application. Yes, you're paying X dollars to host it in the cloud. You're paying Y dollars for labor to support it. You're paying Z dollars for your software on top of that so that you could really understand the whole package. And so we needed the ability to ingest data. We wanted the ability specifically to understand how we were allocating, right? Direct is easy. You built it, you tagged it, you pay for it. Indirect, network expense. Well, everybody has to pay a piece of that pie. Is that equal? Right? You have 100 people living in cloud, everybody pays 100th of that network expense. Or do you have some really big applications that probably consume more, and therefore they should pay more with respect to indirect? And then, of course, we have the shared platform spend as well. So let's talk about, for example, a bunch of applications that need an ETL tool, right? We farm that cost back out. There are different ways you could do it. You could do it by job, you could do it by execution, et cetera. We need to add that piece in, and so we need to ingest all that information into our tool so that, again, we can report full cost for an application. And lastly, the reporting, right? We want to be able to show all the pieces. We want to be able to show different roll-ups, right? So if you, again, look at the ETL tool, the cost of the ETL tool is X. It sits on various services in the cloud. It has software. It has labor. That's great. But then that X is farmed out across all the customers who use it. So we need to report it both ways, which has been an ongoing challenge for us that we're looking to solve. We also wanted recommendations for all the different reserved instance types, right? As I hope are very similar to many of you, moving into the cloud, we started as IaaS, infrastructure as a service, because that was the easiest stuff to move or to build. But over time now, we're moving more into platform as a service. And there are lots of different services that have reserved instance capabilities. And so we wanted to be able to get recommendations on all those different services, including savings plans now as well, so that we could really look to optimize the spend in areas where those made sense. And lastly, we wanted the hybrid use benefit and to be able to report on that with respect to software licenses, where you're using them both on-prem and in the cloud, so that we could monitor that and ensure that we weren't paying for software that we already owned, or dealing with marketplace cost, and be sure that people were not buying software that we already owned because they didn't know we owned it. So that's what drove the big RFP for which we chose Flexera, and that's what we've been working feverishly on implementing in terms of all of our reporting and dashboards, et cetera, along with Power BI. We knew that the tool wouldn't be enough, however. We knew we'd have to do customization on top of that. We have, and we continue to do more. And the key areas that we need to look at specifically are the unique cost allocation algorithms, and I put about 6 or 8 of them in the slides, but the fact is there's about 15, right? I talked about an ETL tool where you may allocate based on number of jobs, you may allocate based on job execution. Let's talk about a big reporting tool, right, where you may allocate based on number of reports or how often the reports run, or somebody's got a big, huge report that takes, 12 cores to run, and somebody else has a teeny report that runs in 30 seconds. How do you split the cost between them? We have big shared environments like data lakes and Databricks, right, that are consumed by multiple customers, and how do we split the cost there? Or Kubernetes is another one. We don't build one Kubernetes for every person who needs it. We build one and lots of people come in and share it, but then we have to figure out how to split the cost amongst all those people and give it back to them. So all the unique cost algorithms that we have are managed within our tool, or we're ingesting data from Excel so that we can produce the end cost. We wanted to be sure that we could handle internal reorgs, right? The dollars are the dollars, and at the end of the day, what PepsiCo pays to any cloud provider, we pay. That doesn't change. But our business units internally change. And when we do internal reorganizations of business units, we need to go back and restate the costs so that you can get a correct cost at year end for what that business unit or subset of business unit paid. So we need the flexibility to rearrange it all on demand, although we hopefully don't have to do that very often. And then the last piece is what we call full stack reporting, right, which is all of the components. So we talked about direct, we talked about indirect. Those are the easier of the two. The shared platform stuff is a killer. All the pieces of a shared platform need to go into the bucket with the application or product so that we can truly see the true cost of the application, and we can see all the optimization recommendations that go with the application. So if you've got wasted space in your data lake, if you've got optimization in Databricks, if you've got 100 jobs that never run, yet you're paying by job, right? You want to know that so that you can go clean it up. So we look to provide full stack reporting for all the components. We're not done yet. We still have a ways to go, but we are definitely on that journey because that's a big deliverable for us for this year, because people want to know what is their true cost. The second piece is the integration, right? You can ingest it all through Excel, which is nifty, and we certainly do our fair share of that. But there are lots of other tools that we have. We're a large company, many of you are as well. There isn't just one tool that does everything, how I wish there were. According to one of the FinOps Foundation surveys, the average company has 4 tools. From a FinOps perspective, we're right there in the mix with everybody else. So we use KubeCost to help manage the AKS spend. I know I walked by their booth shortly ago. We use Apptio from a TBM perspective. So we're looking at ingesting cost, right, from those tools, from Databricks, et cetera, so that we can do our splits. And then we're looking at passing that to the next step, which in our case is Apptio, to do the full TBM reporting, right? The world is not all about the cloud. It is to me, because that's my job. But from a TBM perspective, they care about lots of other components to produce the full cost of IT, and so we need to feed our data over to them. What we traditionally do is just email Excel files all over the place. Yes, somebody keeps a meeting notice on their calendar. It's the first of the month, better go email this file to so-and-so, right? So we're trying to convert over to the APIs so that it will all just flow, and we don't have to take the manual step of creating an Excel file and then emailing it off to somebody. But there's a challenge with that with respect to how the data becomes final, quote unquote, from a bill, right? And so when you look at the cloud data, it's the end of the month, it's the 30th or 31st. You come into the office on the 1st, guess what? Your cloud bill isn't final. They're still doing adjustments to the data. So we really don't want people to pull the data out of Flexera until we're sure the month has settled, which is usually around the 10th or so, because we want people to pull reporting, dashboarding, API data, et cetera, so that it matches what we bill them. So, you know, it becomes kind of chasing the tail, if you will, if somebody pulls data on, say, the 2nd, and they're expecting a charge of X dollars, but then we bill them on the 15th, and it's Y dollars. So we have to be careful with the APIs such that people understand. You can't always pull the data at any specific minute in the day of the month that you want, because it evolves. And lastly, we want to add the other pieces, right, which is what we're using the Excel files to ingest. BYOL software is the biggest one, right, because we have a lot of operating system software, database software, security software, et cetera. And so when you look at the cost of an application, you have to include all those pieces. Otherwise, it's not a true cost. And so we're trying to ingest all of that as well so that we can really show the true cost of the application. The other piece that I wanted very intentionally was the KPIs. And from last year, if I sat next to any of you last year, the mantra was, "Hi, my name is Kim, what are your KPIs?" Because I was on a mission to collect every KPI in the world that we could use so that we could pick the top 10 or 15 or 20 that were for us. So I talked to everyone. I talked to all of our cloud providers. I talked to all of our partners who are providing support, consultant organizations, the advisory services, talking to everybody, what are your recommendations for KPIs? What are you using? What's working? What's not? The FinOps Foundation has a really good page from the working group that had a lot of KPIs on there. And of course, I threw those all on my list as well. The problem with this approach is that then you end up with 100 KPIs, and you can spend your whole month doing KPI reporting and not doing any other work, because that's all you do. So we limited it to about 10 or so, fit on 2 pages in PowerPoint, and that's what we started with from a KPI perspective. So we have custom automation that's being developed to produce the KPIs every month so that we can measure the maturity of the practice. So the KPIs currently don't measure the customers or the business units. The KPIs measure us, my team in particular. And so we look at things like how much RI do we have? We have a target percentage, and are we close to that? We look at how much waste we have with underutilized reserved instances, because that's a bad thing. We look at for orphan resources and cleaning up those orphan resources, and we're not expecting to find big percentages of that. We look for underutilized or idle. Again, that's a bit tricky depending on your monitoring software that's collecting that data, the cloud-native tools that collect that data, and the fact that databases use cycles whether anybody uses the database or not. So that takes a bit of complexity in order to report on. And our new offering, which we are still working on the full end-to-end automation for, what we're calling it shutdown at will. This is a big culture shift from a data center perspective where everything runs 24/7. Because now, instead of saying, hi, my name is Kim, what are your KPIs? Now it's, hi, my name is Kim, are you working this weekend? Oh, no, you have a family engagement? Okay, shut down your stuff because you're not working on the weekend and there's no reason to pay for it. It's a whole different mindset from a culture perspective for people to really buy into. And so we've got a big marketing campaign around that. Now there's complexity there, that's not a piece of cake, right? If you've got an application that has 1,000 interfaces coming in and out, shutting that down and starting that up can be a nightmare. Maybe it's not worth it, but it's still worth the conversation. So we look at our optimization in 4 main buckets currently. We had 8, we consolidated down to 4 to start with, and now we will expand when I feel that we have mastered these 4 and my team says, yep, we're good to go, we're going on to the next set. The first one is right sizing. Don't pay for capacity you don't need, right? In a data center, you're typically doing leases over a couple of years, so you have to size for your peak, size for your end of month utilization, even though the rest of the month you're not using all that capacity. We don't have to do that in the cloud. Again, culture shift, right? Start small, build up. So we have cases where people started big and we need to bring them down from a right-sizing perspective. Shutdown at will, if you're not using services, especially non-prod, especially on the weekends, shut them down. You can start them back up Monday morning. We're looking at an end-to-end offering from an automation perspective, where you can put in the time and you'll come in the morning and everything will be back up the way it's supposed to be. Because it's silly to pay for things that people are not using. The reserved instance commitment, the 1 year or 3 year, we're looking at that too. And in cases where something is sized properly and it's going to live for a year, we'll take that action, or 3 years, we'll take that action. But we really want to make sure that the sizing is okay, because you hate to buy a reserved instance for something that's too big or too small, because then you have to go mess with it afterwards with exchanges and all sorts of other complications that make things very tricky. And then lastly, eliminating waste. Right? Look at how you use things. So, if you were sitting on 10 years of data, but you really only need 7, get rid of the other 3. These are the conversations that we're having with people. How much data are you sitting on? Do you have old snapshots, orphan disks, et cetera, that we're paying for? People don't always realize that they're paying for each of these individual little pieces, because when you come from a data center mentality, we had it all anyway. And so cleaning it up didn't have the level of urgency that it has with cloud, right? When we have these kinds of conversations, it's very specific and intentional. You could think about it, that's okay. Every day that you think about it, you're costing us money. So think quick. Because if you take 3 weeks to think about taking an activity, we're burning money while you ponder what to do with that. We developed a lot of training for our decentralized folks to really understand what we were looking to do here in the cloud. And we tried to use real-world examples. One of my teammates came up with the analogy with the building, right? Because we were thinking about, turn your lights off, turn your water off, turn your air conditioning down or up, depending on your view, if you're going away for the weekend, right? And so in the concept of a building, you want to make sure that you have the right space. You don't rent 10 offices if you're going to start with 2. You want to be sure that you do turn your lights off and your air conditioning up or down when you're out for the weekend, because there's no reason to pay for that utility consumption. You want to sign the lease based on your confidence level, right, of using your space long term, and obviously keep your space clean and uncluttered. So we take these common everyday things and try to apply them to the cloud so that people understand. Because the cloud was new for a lot of our customers, internal customers. Some of them are more on the business side than the tech side, so they weren't fully aware. of the capabilities that the cloud brings with respect to optimization. Then, of course, you have the executive buy-in. It's hard enough to build a brand new team and hire brand new people to do this kind of work. So we had a lot of education around how we need to manage the cloud differently and building the FinOps team and getting the buy-in of all the different senior leaders of the business units, that we needed their participation. Again, this is not something that we do to you, right? It's a partnership, it takes a village. And so we developed a lot of scorecarding that we'd present at the monthly steering committee meetings and show these executives, right? Here's your total cloud spend for your business unit. Here's the reduction that we've executed in partnership with your team, which is the green part, year to date. Then we'd show, here's the chunk that your team is still analyzing. They've been analyzing it for a few days, a few weeks, a few months, right? We could go there. But they're looking at it, and we're working together on that. Here's the piece that they said, yeah, go do it, and we're doing it. And here's the piece that they said, thanks, but no thanks. Now, an opt-out is not a bad thing, right? We had people that said, I know you guys think that this looks like it's unused, but it's a high availability environment, and I have an SLA on my HA failover. And if you resize it down because you think it's not being used, you're going to blow my SLA if I do need to fail over. You know what? That's a great reason not to touch it. We track that and move along to something else. We have other people who have contractual obligations with vendors of certain sizing, because that sizing makes the vendor more confident that they can deliver their SLAs for performance. So even though it looks like it may not be used, we can't touch it. Great reason to leave it as is. We'll log it and move along. We call that not addressable, right? So we want to focus our time in engaging with people for the stuff that we can go after, not fighting about this stuff that we can't deal with. And those are all valid reasons to not optimize something. And if any of you are part of the podcasts, listen to the podcast from the FinOps Foundation. They have a great one called FinOps. And if you listen to FinOps, it's about a number of people who took optimization exercises that kind of blew up in their face because there were more complications to it than, hey, just go shut something down or go get rid of something. So you really need to know what you're doing in that space, which is why you need to partner with the people that own it. It's not a FinOps thing where we can just go, oh, we're going to shut this down, nobody's using it. No. It takes a joint effort to really understand so that you don't mess things up and cause an unplanned outage. So as we do the communication with the leaders, right? And of course, what leader is going to say, oh, cost reduction? Yeah, thanks, I'm not interested. Nobody's going to say that. Everybody's interested in cost reduction. But you have to be really clear what you're communicating, and more importantly, who's communicating it, right? Because you can't just get a bunch of people and go start farming these messages out to everybody. You have to use people that either have trust with the folks that we're dealing with or can build that trust very easily. But most importantly, those people really have to know and understand the data, right? Because when you talk to somebody and say, hey, we think that we could scale this down. You're using X capacity. We think it should be Y. I say, oh, but I can't do that because I run batch every morning at 9 a.m. and I need a lot of horsepower for that. Or, hey, I have my month-end process and I need a lot of horsepower for that. My folks need to be able to say, yep, we know. We see that in the data when we look at what your utilization is. We see it every time you run. And so when we give you this recommendation, we're already taking that into consideration, right? But if it's a different conversation and you're like, oh, okay, well, then we'll just say no, then you're not going to make as much traction on it, and you're not going to build trust with those folks. Those application developers or engineers or whoever you're dealing with, if they have to go double check all of your recommendations and your data, it's going to take even longer to execute. So you want to build that trust so that when you come in with those recommendations, they know they're right, and then they can make quick decisions on what we're going to do, what we're not going to do. You need to be able to tailor the conversation. There was a lot of talk earlier today about personas, right? When you're talking with a VP, obviously they want the roll-up of their business unit. When you're talking about this application developer, they only want to see their stuff. They don't care about everybody else. And so you need to be able to talk high, talk low, depending on what role people have. If they're in finance, right, they don't want all the technical gobbledygook and all the different pieces for the cost, right? If they're a business unit lead, they want a certain level of communication there as well. So the people that we put in the FinOps role that are driving these meetings with all of our customers in our service offering, which is what we call a cloud cost consult, have to be able to communicate at all those levels, have to really know the data inside and out, and have to be able to instill that trust. Because at the end of the day, we really want people to be able to take this data and run with it. Right? We have it in Flexera dashboards. We have it in Power BI dashboards. There's no need to wait for a meeting. You can go do it. You just have to get people comfortable with the data and trained so they understand so that they can deliver. Right? And why is it important? Well, in some cases, people are over budget. So our activities will bring them back into budget. So then they're compliant, quote unquote. That's not really savings. There's a whole other session on that Disney did last year. What is savings and what is not. Getting somebody back into budget isn't really savings. But of course, if we can deliver true savings, and it may be $10 a person across an awful lot of people, right? Then collectively we can give that money back to the business to help buy a truck, to help do a new manufacturing line, whatever it is they want to do. So the communication piece is critical, and this is where we launched our service offering. It's called a Cloud Cost Consult. CCC, which is what was in the title of the session, right? So we have these dashboards in Flexera and Power BI. We have all the data, and we have designated people from our core employee base as well as from our managed service provider. We have a couple of bodies there as well. So collectively, we have about 6 or 7. And we go out to all of our key cloud application owners and our business unit leaders, et cetera, and we share all this data. Here's what you're spending. Here are the optimization recommendations, right? And of course, it's a long list. We don't go for the whole list, right? We go for the top 2 or 3 every time. And it's a cyclical process, right? Even if we did the whole list, we'd come back again next month because they'd build new stuff that didn't exist the previous month. So even if we did everything, we'd still be going back and forth on a cyclical process over and over again. But we don't even go for everything, right? We go for the top couple. And do the education, work together on the optimization activities that we're going to go for so that these internal customers are enabled, right? We're not the cloud police. We're not going to go do something to you, but folks need to be enabled with data, with understanding, with training so that they can go after their own optimization because my organization is more about governance and reporting, right? The KPIs, the monitoring, et cetera. We want to position people such that they can go take action when they need, and they don't need to wait for a monthly meeting. So empowerment is key, right? It's that old adage, you give somebody a fish, they eat for a day. You teach them to fish, they eat forever, right? So we want to teach people how to act on the data, how to go for their optimization activities, and we track what's being done, what's not done, what the cloud cost reduction is that we report out every month, and then we continue on, and it's a cyclical process. Obviously, when you take action in January, right, you get a whole lot more back because you have 11 months worth than if you take action in, say, November, then you get 2 months back. But it's still worth doing, and so we're still out there marketing this whole initiative to everyone so that we can get action from the various teams. So how do we train? We have multiple activities that we do. We have this Cloud Cost Consult service offering. At the time we did the slides, we had 70 plus meetings. Right now we're at 100 that we have done with all of our key consumers from the cloud. We don't necessarily go after the people with the teeny spend. We go after the people with the bigger spend. We have office hours that we do periodically where folks can come with questions about their particular application on the dashboard and what the action is that's being recommended. We track the usage in the tool so that we can gauge when we need to do new training events. We have bots on the back end that handle some of the tagging anomalies for us because tagging is what drives the visibility to the app owners. So you have to have the right tags so that they can see their cost. And we have interactive training that we developed, not only on the tool, but on the concepts, the FinOps concepts for PepsiCo, right? So you can do the FinOps Foundation training, which is FinOps in general, but we want people to understand specifically what we're showing them, right? Because when you see a VM cost on-prem in a spreadsheet, the column says VM cost. When you see a spreadsheet with VM cost in the cloud, they look at it and go, oh, it's the same size, same cost. Okay, this one's cheaper, yay. But those aren't the same. Because on-prem, the cost may have a whole lot more in it. It may include storage. It may include all the pieces. Your cloud cost may not. You have to go add those all together. So people need to really understand the data, which is part of our training from an interactive perspective. We do several sessions a year called Learn Togethers, where we, again, reach 100, 200 people at a time. And we walk through different capabilities, different new offerings from a FinOps perspective that we deliver. And we record those, and then folks can go listen to those at different points in the year when it makes sense for what they're doing. We also have training in PowerPoint that we pre-record that folks can listen to on demand. And we have a quarterly newsletter that we send out. And the big thing about the quarterly newsletter, what we were using to get traction, is we have a savings superhero. And so if you remember the old Batman cartoons where it had the POW and then the cute little star or whatever in it, we have a savings superhero that's very similar to that. And we call out somebody who has really partnered well with our team. It may not be about dollars. It's not always about dollars. We may be launching a new initiative like our Shutdown at Will, and we had somebody who volunteered to be a guinea pig for that. They were our savings superhero for that quarter. So where are we going next, specifically with our set of activities? It's a culture shift. Cloud is a culture shift. We're really trying to drive people away from the 24/7 mentality, right, with all the leases and the capital expense and everything else where everything's a fixed cost, to really understand the variability of the cloud and take advantage and embrace that variability so that you can really move to a pay-as-you-use mindset, moving more to platform as a service from infrastructure as a service where we can truly leverage some of that you pay when you use it versus paying for traditional VMs and databases that are up all the time. Well, I thought it was a cute slogan about cost optimization is everyone's responsibility. Even having the second time slot of the day that was said, I can't tell you how many times from the keynote in the first session. So it's no longer such a cute slogan now, it's just getting old. But in general, just like security is everyone's responsibility, cloud cost optimization is everybody's responsibility. And so that's part of our mantra as well, building that awareness and building that ownership. And so as you look at application ownership, product ownership, this whole DevSecOps responsibility, part of that responsibility is understanding your cost model and understanding what you can do about your cost model in terms of reduction and making sure you're delivering the maximum amount of value for the least amount of cost. So in order to get really where we're going, we're embracing the cyclical nature of FinOps, we're embracing the inform, optimize, operate, and we're really trying to shift people's mindset to understand the true benefits of the cloud and embrace some of these new features that we didn't have in the past. So we are working feverishly this year. Hopefully I'll be invited back next year with big news and big updates with respect to tool integration and how we make all of these different tools talk to each other. The culture shift in how we move from cloud infrastructure as a service to PaaS, and in how we move from the 24/7 mindset to the whole, I'm using it, I'll pay for it, I need it, and then I'm done. Okay, let me shut it down, I'm going away for the weekend kind of thing. And with respect to the education. Without the education, the very specific PepsiCo education for the consumer base, we're never going to get what we're looking to out of the FinOps practice, because we really want to enable people to be self-sufficient. And to do that, they need the training. Not just, hey, we're doing something Friday at 2, please come, but something that somebody can consume on their own time, right? Being a global company, Tuesday at 2 is great for whatever time zone you happen to be in. It's not so great for the time zones on the other side of the world. So we have to be able to enable folks to consume the training when they need the training.
Thanks for watching. Check out more FinOps X 2024 content on our YouTube channel on the 2024 playlist. Support our channel by liking, subscribing, clicking the notification bell, and by leaving comments and questions for our speakers. We appreciate your support.